Good morning and welcome to Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Small Businesses, which is the second installment of the Detroit Regional Chamber's Black and Diverse Owned Business Series. I'm Tammy Carnreich. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Chamber. Throughout 2021 and 2022, the Chamber is proud to host a series of events to help small, medium, and large diverse-owned businesses in Southeast Michigan to grow. This series is a part of the Chamber's Racial Justice and Economic Equity Initiative. The ideal Detroit region is an equal and fair community where all people have the opportunity, resources, and tools to achieve their potential and lead healthy and fulfilling lives with rewarding work. This leads to a more robust economy and a greater community well-being. I encourage you to visit detroitchamber.com/equity to learn more about the Chamber's efforts to advance racial justice and economic equity. And I also have to thank Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan for their support of the Black and Diverse Owned Business Series. And so with that, I would like to introduce today's panel, and that is if you can all still see me, because somehow my power just went off and I have no light. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So for today's panel, these are such dynamic women. I have to tell you, I have been so impressed talking with them. So the panel is Chanel Scott Contreras, and she's the executive of Prosperus Detroit. Portia Roberson is the president and chief executive officer for Focus Hope. And Kim Rustum is the director of Civil Rights, Inclusion, and Opportunity Department for the city of Detroit. So ladies, I'd like to welcome you all to today's
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so happy to have you. And so I have several questions already, and obviously our audience will probably have some also. But first off, as I had mentioned to you up front, I think it's really important is, what is the most important point that you hope that we make out of today's discussion? So Portia, I'll call on you first.
Well, I think that the most important point to realize out of this discussion is really that using equity and diversity is not a favor, it is good economic business. So it is good financial business. And really, I think that in this discussion about diversity and equity, a lot of times larger companies and smaller companies believe that they're doing a favor to those that they employ or those that they hire or those that they utilize. And in actuality, what we found is that it is good business sense.
Thank you very much. Chanel.
Yeah, so in my work, I support entrepreneurs, and as I think about what equity inclusion means for our small business landscape, I know that it requires an intentional focus on the smallest of the small business owners. So micro business, sole proprietors are such an important aspect to making sure that our business landscape is fully resourced and inclusive.
Thank you. And Kim.
So as the Director of Civil Rights, Inclusion, Opportunity, but also having spent most of my career in government, I do believe that government has a responsibility to make sure that we are creating an economy that is equitable and inclusive, and that includes within the small business space. Government did in the past actively contribute to disenfranchisement of Black and communities of color. And so we have a responsibility to create a new path forward and create opportunities in the future. So.
Oh, sounds great. This is going to be a great discussion. So let's start off with the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion for small business. Larger businesses have increasingly recognized the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why is it just as critical for small business? And how do each of your organizations support this emphasis? Portia, let's start with you.
So I think It's equally important for small businesses because you want to avoid some of the mistakes that we've seen when people don't use people from diverse backgrounds in their companies. And so we really try to encourage that you're looking at the entire community when you are talking about who are going to be your employers and or how you are going to promote your product to some of the larger entities that might be using you. And really, I mean, what we found in the last year or two is that people want to only do business with those that they feel are diverse. So really, it's again back to that economic line of people are looking to see who do you have on staff, who have you hired, and why would I give you my money if you're not making it an intentional practice to go out and have a diverse workforce. And I think at Focus Help, one of the ways in which we see the ability to help that is to really look inward first and foremost. Even as a nonprofit, I like to tell people that people think that because nonprofits are feel good, that the diversity and equity happens without being intentional about it. And that's simply not true. We have to be intentional as well. But I think it's a reflection for us, even as a nonprofit, to talk about who are we utilizing when we have to get goods and services. Who are we going to? Are we targeting small businesses? Are we targeting small businesses that are reflective of the community that we serve?
Yeah, that's really important because the chamber itself obviously is a nonprofit, and we've been examining that ourselves. What's our diversity spend, and and how do we find diverse vendors that can support what we need?
Exactly.
Kim, in addition to discussing why diversity, equity, inclusion is so important for small business, which I want you to address, but I'd like to ask you then, after you do that, to share your family story about coming to Detroit.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you. So in terms of, again, I'm always going to kind of bring the government perspective here, but it's so important for government to be making sure that we are pushing policies that are supportive of Black and Indigenous and people of color owned businesses. And to do that, I think there needs to be one in terms of affordable capital needs to be available to those small businesses. The really big businesses oftentimes have access to a lot more financial tools. Our system is a little bit just kind of set up to better support the bigger businesses. And unfortunately, due to our past history of discrimination, racism in this country, I mean, our smaller businesses also tend to be our Black and Indigenous and people of color businesses, because the wealth generation and the individual wealth just isn't there the same way that it was able to be created in some of the white communities. So that's why I do believe that government really needs to be better supportive of smaller businesses and making sure that equity and inclusion is important to that. And then personally, I care deeply about really supporting BIPOC businesses. Tammy, I did have the opportunity to tell you about how my family actually came to Detroit. So my mom's side of the family, so my mom's Black. My grandpa and grandma were living in Arkansas, as I know that I have the typical, I think, Detroit, story. But my grandparents were living in Arkansas. My mom was a little girl at the time. They moved up to Detroit because my grandpa heard that there were jobs there. And he went to the train station actually to go to California because it was warmer there, but someone told him when he was there to go to Detroit. So he bought his ticket to Detroit. He landed in Detroit, and he got a job on the line. So he actually got a job on 2 lines. He worked 18-hour days. My mom is one of 10 kids actually, and supported that family. But then he was able to save enough money to eventually buy a party store, a liquor store, right on Livernois. And actually, I'll give a shout out to B&B Mower. If you've ever seen that company, that used to be my grandpa's party and liquor store right on Livernois. So, and with that, he was able to build wealth for his family. And my mom is a first generation college student, along with many of her siblings. And that was because my grandpa was able to really build his own autonomy, build his own business, and really create wealth generation. And I just want to say that it really does change generations when you allow for that to happen. I am where I am because of the choices that and the work that my grandpa made. So, so I just wanted to share that.
That's such a great story, and I'm sure there are so many more across Detroit that we could hear from and talk about, and that's what's built us up to be this proud city that we are. So Chanel, first, tell us about Prosperus Community Development Financial Institutions and why diversity, equity, and inclusion are important for all small businesses.
Absolutely. So first I have to say, Kim, I love your family story. It resonates with me, and I think is super aspirational and also relatable for so many people, especially the entrepreneurs we work with at Prosperus Detroit. So yes, we're a community development financial institution. So we're able to provide resources that are affordable, including access to capital in the form of microloans to those who are seeking to, whether it be launch a business or grow a business. And we focus on Detroit, Hamtramck, and Highland Park. So community development financial institutions are organizations that provide access to capital. Some focus on business, some focus on housing, but we are fortunate to have a great ecosystem of collaborators and partners, CDFIs in Detroit, that really help cover the spectrum of different levels of access to capital for those who might not be able today to walk into a bank and get a loan for their business. So at Prosperus, we make loans of just a few $100s up to $50,000, and other lenders go well beyond that into more of the small business lending in terms of volume of loan size. And we focus on serving entrepreneurs of color in Detroit's neighborhoods because, just like Kim has shared, having the opportunity to support or to launch and grow a business creates life opportunities, wealth building opportunities, not just for the entrepreneur, but their family, but also the surrounding community. I'm always inspired by the idea that a child growing up in a neighborhood should be able to walk down their neighborhood retail corridor and see themselves in the businesses that are there, to be inspired and to know that that's an option for them, and to just live in a vibrant community where you can get your needs met, the goods and services that your family needs. So we know that that's so important, and in order to do that and to support diverse and to be equitable in how we support business owners, we have to pay attention to where the barriers are. And unfortunately, in our community, there's still many barriers. Of course, access to capital is one of them, but also there's so many other types of support and resources that entrepreneurs need, from support with going to market to navigating requirements for their industry, to getting the coaching and advising that they need through all the opportunities and decisions that they have to make every day. So we do have a robust small business support ecosystem, and I'm always challenging my counterparts and our collaborators to continue to evaluate what we need to do differently or do better in order to continue supporting diverse business owners and to be inclusive.
So to follow up on that, Kim, can you talk a little bit more about how CREO supports small businesses in the city?
Absolutely. So we do a few things. One, we have the Detroit Business Opportunity Program. So that program certifies businesses as Detroit business, Detroit resident, Detroit headquartered, small business, micro business. Also, there's mentor venture and joint venture. And basically what that allows is that for companies to basically be able to compete for procurement opportunities in the city, if you're certified as one of those that I mentioned, then you get equalization credits that are part of that process. And I think I love saying Portia Smell too, because Portia, as I've said before, I'm pretty sure was the godmother of this. Yeah, so you'll get equalization credits, and then that allows you to actually compete against the larger companies that probably will be able to come in at a smaller bid price, right? As a smaller company, your costs are just higher. So if you have an equalization credit, then that allows to equalize the playing field in terms of the price of the bid, so that you can compete against some of the larger businesses that might be out of state and might actually be, have a lot of resources at their disposal. So that's one of the ways. Other ways are we're looking at, I support the Detroit Means Business policy team and have really looked at how we can better support micro businesses in the city. As Chanel just mentioned, most of our businesses, of our Black-owned businesses in the city of Detroit and across the country are micro businesses, actually. And so how do we best support those micro businesses to grow and have resources at their disposal that bigger businesses do? So.
Right. So Portia, you touched a little bit on why diversity, equity, and inclusion is so critical to small businesses, but something you and I talked about, I'd like you to elaborate on why it is also so important for communities.
Well, I think what we found at Focus Hope, and I hope you guys can hear me. It's Tuesday. It's feeling like a Monday though, a little lag on my internet for a moment. So forgive me. But I think what we found is that, all of us are talking about and discussing a strong economy and ways in which we can impact communities, neighborhoods. All of those things are directly related to people utilizing small businesses and to looking at the small businesses that are in their own neighborhoods to really promote those, support those, get their goods and services from those. When you build a strong neighborhood, and part of the way of doing that, or build a strong community, part of the way of doing that is by supporting those small businesses and having an avenue where more small businesses come into your community. Once that begins to happen, the economy in that area and throughout the region continues to grow. So I think it's so important that we encourage people to utilize those businesses that are just getting started in your neighborhood, because we know that when you look at the most successful neighborhoods, even when you drive around our region, when you look at neighborhoods that we all enjoy, that we all like to go to, that we gravitate to, lots of times it's not an area where there are the tons of big box stores or there are the large malls, but it's really the small businesses that you can walk and gravitate towards. And really those dollars continuing to generate within communities is what builds the bottom line of a strong economy.
Oh, so true, so true. A couple times in this discussion, in our past diversity webinar, and just actually came up today, is the importance of capital, minority-owned small businesses. And in the past, it's also been around female minority-owned businesses. We know the lifeblood of every business. Small and minority-owned businesses have often had more difficult time accessing capital. So let me start with you, Chanel. How can small businesses work with community development financial institutions? And you touched on this earlier a little bit. And what impact does that have on their ability to access capital from other sources?
Yeah, most definitely. So first, I think that we've done a good job in Detroit of creating an open and inclusive process at CDFI. So many of us have online applications, paper applications, different avenues of engaging with the organization to get the process started. That often looks like giving some basic information about the business owner and the business, and then there being an interview or more detailed conversation to learn more about what the needs are of the business. And I think what's interesting about CDFIs is that because, especially in Detroit, because we collaborate and work together, sometimes if that particular organization isn't the right fit based on whether it be your business type or the size of loan that you're looking for, we can often make a direct referral to another organization so that you can continue that conversation and you're not just out there with no next step. I think that's something that we all care a lot about, and continuing to make the process really clear for everybody. But beyond, kind of starting the conversation, sometimes the biggest challenge can be having enough kind of proof of concept to even make that next step in accessing a loan feasible. And I think there's a few things that business owners can do as they work to prove concept. And one is really more of an idea and a call for other organizations like mine. When we think about equity and inclusion, kind of touching on some of the points Kim made, we know that not all or not enough Black, Latinx, Indigenous, and people of color businesses have access to generational wealth or the level of income required to even get started. So I make a point to, and many others are doing the same thing. So let me not paint it as like I'm the only one saying this, but we need to be creative about providing capital in the form of grants and other mechanisms that can allow people to just get started. Because I think about the people who have that natural entrepreneurial drive and talent, who are doing this from their basement, from the back of their car, but haven't been able to get started because of that initial seed funding that we need. So we've been doing more grants and partnerships that lead to grants to more businesses here at Prosperus. So I want to say that is that's an important part. But beyond that, that becomes a stepping stone, right? So whatever that seed capital is to get that proof of concept, that becomes a stepping stone to opportunities like Prosperus, where you can access capital up to $50,000. Sometimes 5,000 is the right amount. Sometimes 50,000 is what's needed. And I think that it's important that lenders and the entrepreneurs seeking capital understand that the goal is for a long-term relationship. And even if 50,000 might not be the right fit today, that sometimes it makes more sense to scale back, to really prove confidence, to use that time to also work on personal financials if that's an issue, and then be able to come back to that lender or to move on to the next lender for the next size of capital. So whether it be creating a capital stack for one deal or creating a kind of a laddered approach where you're taking one step at a time, what's important are relationships, building trust, and not kind of diving too far into the deep end, but to really find the right resources for that right moment. And I think when both the lenders and the entrepreneurs enter the relationship with that kind of ethos, then we're able to be, the lender is able to be most supportive of the true needs of that business at that time and help the business be successful.
Kim, can you talk more about what the role of the city and CREO are playing to help micro and small minority businesses to get access to capital?
Yeah, so a couple ways. So one is, again, going back to that policy group that I was mentioning, we partnered with Pam Lewis at NEI to put together a report that really focused on micro businesses. The theory behind it, or why I was so interested, and Pam as well, was to say, you know, COVID-19, everything that happened to small businesses during that time, that was not just because of COVID-19. The theory that I had and Pam had was, you know, actually it just really highlighted that we had such a fragile infrastructure to begin with for micro businesses and small businesses. And the theory behind that was that, you know, if you really think about it, that there's kind of an assumption in a lot of, I think, the programs that are available that government supports, that, oh, you'll get yourself to 10 or 20 employees. That's on you. That's for you to do with your wealth that you've accumulated. But that assumption is, as we know through history, is inherently unfair, because there were communities that were prevented from accumulating that wealth. And so if we have that assumption in government that you make it to 20 and then we'll help you, well, that's leaving out a whole group of small businesses, and particularly our BIPOC businesses. So we really looked at, you know, what is the government infrastructure that exists, and how and what should be there. And you know, what we found is that there was a role for government to play a better role in terms of making sure that we're supporting CDFIs and making sure that we're supporting Black banks or financial institutions that have relationships with Black businesses or minority businesses already. So that's one thing. We've been working with the state. I was really happy to see that actually as part of the ARPA dollars, we've been working with the state. There is a call out for Main Street and micro businesses in that. Now we just need the legislature to kind of move forward and get that passed. But that's some of the policy work that we've been doing around that. And then again, on micro businesses and small business, we actually do have a certification that better helps for equalization credits for specifically using a micro or small business. What we're also trying to do is really look at, what are the, bonding requirements in procurement? What are the, how big are the contracts that are going out? Are we really supporting our micro and small businesses through our procurement processes? And we've been working on that, and our procurement team has been doing, I think, an excellent job of really trying to better understand that. But that's some of the work that we're doing at CREO around that.
That's great. So let's shift gears from finance, and we know that small businesses also need support in workforce development, training, and other resources. Portia, how can a small business make sure they're connecting with potential employees? And tell us a little about what steps Focus Hope is taking to help train a 21st century workforce for these businesses.
It's been really interesting. I think, COVID has highlighted a number of things. One of those being that we have a program at Focus Hub called Generations of Promise, where we bring in younger people from both the suburbs and the city to sort of share their life experiences. And one of the questions I've gotten repeatedly this year is really about what we're doing for entrepreneurs, because I think, Tammy, without saying too much, we are of a generation where we decided we would get employment, right? Jobs. The next generation, I think more of Chanel and Kim, really want to start their own businesses. And so that's the first step, is that we're trying to make sure that we are providing opportunities for helping younger people look at how they start their own small business, right? With the hopes that they'll grow into a large business, but that's what they want to know about right now. And then, of course, because of the last year, we get calls all the time about, I need 50 employees, I need 20 employees, I need 5 employees. I mean, the gamut runs from small businesses to your large corporations, because the workforce has changed so dramatically in the last 16 months or so. One of the things we're doing is trying to make sure that we have those people, sort of building a bench of people that can come out and work when people are calling us saying, we need employees. Now, the truth of the matter is, in small businesses and in large businesses, we have to make sure that they are fair and equitable employers, right? Because the reality of it is that we are now in a place where people are not taking whatever we offer them. They are asking for, and they are driving sort of the employee-employer relationship in ways that we have never seen before. But we certainly know that we are trying to make sure that that bench is deep enough that when people are looking for those employees, when they're trying to ramp out to the 20 employees that Chanel and Kim have spoken about, that we are able to assist them in giving them great employees. And also really talking about, at a nonprofit like Focus Hope, what can we do to assist that person continue to be a great employee? I've talked to a lot of places, small businesses and larger businesses, which talk about the retention of an employee and how we can assist in some of the other barriers that we don't necessarily think about, that really are driven by some of the privilege that some of us have, that we assume that somebody can jump in their car, and if that car doesn't immediately turn over, they can just get in their second car and go to work. And so we really look at, how do we give you a great employee and make sure you have a diverse workforce, but also at Focus Hope, assisting you with the barriers that are created by some of the things that Kim has talked about historically, some of the things that Chanel is dealing with as she brings in people to try to help them get capital. We're here to try to make sure that those employees or those people starting those businesses have the support they need to continue to be successful.
And I think we shared together when we talked, you're really doing the extra work to focus on what's needed for the next 21st century workforce.
Absolutely.
What do we need beyond now?
Absolutely. I was having a conversation yesterday where we were talking about the transition from, Focus Hope has always been very centered on the automotive industry. We've had a close relationship with all of the big three. They've evolved, and we have to evolve as well. We can't keep training people for jobs that existed 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Now, yesterday I was told, and I was happy to hear this, that there's going to be sort of a dual path. There is still going to be the need for what we think of as traditional manufacturing. But we also know that the big three are now starting to describe themselves as tech companies as much as they're describing themselves as automotive companies, right? So we need to be looking at what does that look like for someone that either wants to come into that business as a supplier. What does a supplier do now? If are they supplying the same kind of things they were supplying 10 years ago, or are they supplying something completely different? That's the same with the workforce. If you're just sending an employee out, you want to make sure that the employee has the skill set that's necessary, not for today's job or just today's job, but really for the jobs that are going to exist 5 and 10 years from now. I think we are all looking towards the future. We are all being propelled in that direction, not only because of, you know, how time moves on and things have changed, but also because of what we've experienced over the last 16 or so months. And we just want to make sure that what we're doing for the people who come into Focus Hope, both whether they want to be entrepreneurs and whether they want to be employees, really are preparing them for what's going to come in the next 5 to 10 years and beyond.
Yeah, you know, it's so true. I was yesterday out doing a tour of defense industries, and, you know, defense is very much like automotive as it relates to next generation mobility. And they're very much about technology, AI, robotics. And when asking them about the skills of their employees and, you know, how to find them, they really, you know, they said there's a lot out there who go through vocational training to help them get to the point where they can take on these jobs. So I think it's a changing world, and the skill sets required are going to be very different. But we are a state that's full of great educational institutions and organizations like yours to help people.
Thanks, Tammy. And I'll just jump in. One of the things that happened is we have a commercial driver's license program, right? So we knew that there were so many needs for truck drivers when I first started at Focus Hope, which now has been about 3 years. Over even the last 3 years, some of our students have said, I don't want to just drive a truck. I want to know how to figure out how to own my fleet and how to own my own truck and be able to drive myself, literally and figuratively, into my own entrepreneurship and have my own company around truck driving. And that's been a change that we didn't imagine that we would see 3 years ago, right? We thought that people would be overjoyed that there were all of this need for truck drivers, and if we could get them into these jobs, that would be enough. And they've said that's not enough. I don't want to just drive a truck for the next 10, 20 years. I want to really own my own and have truck drivers working for me and the whole nine. And so we've been forced to pivot and figure out ways in which we can help them do that.
That's so great. Kim, I want to call back on you because you mentioned something earlier about policies. What policies are in place or could be put in place to support minority small business growth from your perspective?
Yeah, so a few. I think one I mentioned, which is really, again, starting to put better focus on affordable capital availability. So how does government make sure that CDFIs are being supported through policies? Other, you know, black banks or other types of financial institutions that have those relationships with minority businesses, guaranteeing of loans for businesses. You know, could you know, 0% interest? And I actually think that the head of Detroit Regional Chamber was someone that helped foster this at the Small Business Association, but you know, guaranteeing loans for small businesses, 0% interest loans. Also making sure that we're supporting the different types of services that a business wants and needs. So, you know, having access to legal services, to business plan development, to accounting, to all those things that you really need to help a thriving business. Government should help to support those small businesses getting access to those types of services. I did forget to mention that one thing that we recently did at CREO was we paid for, you know, all small businesses or businesses that are interested in getting part of the marijuana industry. We actually gave everybody their own personal business coach to actually develop out a business plan, to understanding that, you know, people need support with developing out a business plan. There's a lot that goes into it in terms of accounting and legal services. So how can government do more of that by paying for those types of services for small businesses? I also want to call out just, you know, making sure for our women-owned business owners, also childcare. government has a role to play in terms of fairly subsidizing childcare so that more women business owners can get into the field. And also many of the businesses or the childcare businesses are led by women. And so how can we more fairly subsidize those types of businesses and make sure that women have access to those opportunities? So that's a few of my ideas.
No, that's great. What I want to do now is go to some of the questions from our participants in today's program. We have some here. So first, Chanel, what educational programs are in place for entrepreneurs to learn about what it takes to sustain in business? And what is your level of success with
Your sound kind of cut out there. If you don't mind asking, or I'm sorry, repeating the question, Tammy.
Sure. Here, so educational programs, what are educational programs are in place for the entrepreneur to learn more about what it takes to sustain in business, and what is your level of success with these individuals?
Excellent. Thank you for the question. So at Prosperus, we consider our, I guess, the top of the funnel, or like our front door, is kind of occurs through our partnerships with community development organizations, and they host our training. During COVID, it's been virtual, but they still partner very closely with us. And our training program is a starting point for many of the entrepreneurs we work with. It's centered on the development of a business plan. And even more so, there's up to 10 hours of one-to-one support from the instructor or coach to help the entrepreneur determine their action steps. Because every entrepreneur who enters the program is at a different starting point. And so the goal is to support them in developing their goals and to help them get there throughout the course. And that business planning, action-oriented business planning course is a great step first on. But for those who are looking for more support to sustain a business, more of that comprehensive one-to-one coaching model we find has been where the need really is. And so we also offer a coaching program that helps identify the needs, and I should say a more comprehensive coaching opportunity that helps the business owner identify needs and then support specific business projects or access to the professionals they need to move forward. But beyond both our training and our technical assistance or coaching program, we also collaborate with organizations who focus on more mature businesses like Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses. TechTown has programming as well. And we're often referring business owners to the programs that we know of that might be a great fit for them based on their industry or their where they're at in their growth trajectory. And then in terms of success, I'd say that we see many entrepreneurs who either start with a strong idea or have some business experience. Many of them are reporting that they increase revenue or generate revenue for the first time after completing our programming. And then we are especially focused on how many of the entrepreneurs that enter our training program are then able to access capital. We track all of that and feel really confident about how we're doing in terms of the pipeline of people to then access our capital products or others in the market. And we've actually used that information, that data, to help us determine where the needs are in terms of new loan products. So what we found is that more of our participants in our training program needed smaller loans to just get started because it was kind of a big leap to our average loan size, which was $22,000. So then, that kind of relates to what I was saying earlier about that laddered approach. So we believe that these new credit builder products and step-up loans that we're launching next year will help more entrepreneurs get access to the right amount of capital at the right time, and then that would be their maybe just their entry point with many more opportunities to access capital and hopefully grow beyond Prosperus or CDFIs altogether to build credit and be able to walk into a traditional bank and get, hopefully the very best interest rate and a loan that's really going to be at the scale that they need in the future.
All right, thank you, Chanel. Kim, you talked earlier about the certification that CREO can help with for procurement purposes. There's a question about how much does that certification cost? Can you talk a little bit more about that process?
Yeah, so each certification is between, I think it's around between $200 and around $500 for each one. It depends on the kind of size of business. But the process that you go through is you can go right to our website, so at Civil Rights, Inclusion, Opportunity, and then the Detroit Business Opportunity Program. You can click on it. There's basically a what's the word I'm looking at? A form, there we go, that you can fill out that allows you to apply for it. We'll go through, you do have to collect some documents, so you'll have to collect some of, your tax documents and several things like that. We are happy to help you though if you have any questions with that. So please call our office if you have any questions or email me. We help you through that process, and then we'll give you your certification so long as you meet all of the qualifications for that. So again, the smaller the business, so the small and micro business, that's going to be a cheaper certification versus, the Detroit-based one. You could be a pretty big business and get that certification. So it's really based on scale.
Okay, thank you. So this question is one we often get, always so hard to give full response to, I know, but there's a question on what opportunities are out there as far as grants available for small businesses. Anybody want to take that on, or whoever?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So because of the pandemic, we saw more grant opportunities than ever. Philanthropy, corporations really stepped up to do their part in supporting small business owners with grants. With the support of the New Economy Initiative and a host of philanthropic partners, one thing that we were able to do and other lenders were able to do was offer loan relief and rent relief programs to businesses in our networks. There were some open call grant opportunities as well. So many opportunities. You would see a new grant opportunity every day, and they became so competitive because the need was so great that they were giving 1 or 2 days to apply. Unfortunately, we know that there's not as many of those as we've continued to move through COVID, and more businesses are I think a bit more stable, but we know that the need is still there for grants. And so as we work with legislators, with Kim and her team and others working on policy, that's something that I continue to, and many continue to advocate for, are more grant opportunities for small business. And I think that I'd say this, I won't be surprised if we see some new opportunities coming in 2022 as we're, learning that this pandemic is, it's a long-term situation that we're working through.
And Tammy, I'll jump in here and say,
sure.
I'll just say that one of the things that we're noticing even in the nonprofit space, as Chanel said, there's a lot of grant opportunities, but there's also, with a lot of the ARPA dollars and some additional funding that's going to come, a lot of additional assistance. And I think what we really have to encourage people to do is apply for that assistance. You'd be surprised how much money gets left on the table because people either don't know about it or just for whatever reasons a little unsure about whether it applies to them, or even I would say some fear about going after those dollars, whether it's because they're government dollars and people have maybe a distrust about what it's ultimately going to mean for their business. But I really would say that during this time when so many dollars are being filtered through to states and cities and then onto organizations like all of ours, really look for those opportunities where you can get some of the assistance, some of the relief that's out there, because, and don't be afraid to ask the questions about whether this relief applies to you. Even if it doesn't, there's a lot of times when you can offer other opportunities that would be available for them. I know we're working with people on rent assistance in Wayne County, and while it's not necessarily for businesses, it is for, there are other opportunities that may be for businesses, but don't leave any money on the table, is I guess what I would say. Like,
Right,
let's not, at this moment, this is not the time to shy away from going after all the opportunities and all of those dollars that are being filtered into cities and states.
Portia, I have to jump in again to share that I think sometimes the barrier, particularly for entrepreneurs of color or entrepreneurs working in low to moderate income neighborhoods, is that there's a quick turnaround and they need a lot of information, especially around the financials. So they want to see your profit and loss statement, your cash flow statement. And if you're not working with an accountant, or you're just not ready to share that, you can miss out on thousands of dollars. And so earlier I mentioned some of our coaching and business services. We can help connect and cover almost, sometimes 75% of the cost of working with professionals. And that, in a way, acts as a micro grant. So we've supported businesses with these micro investments into the services that they need, like accounting and bookkeeping, to about $2,500 per business in some cases, depending on the need. And so, if you are in Detroit, Hampshire, and Highland Park-based businesses, go to prosperusdetroit.org if you're seeking support with accounting and bookkeeping, so you have those things ready.
Yep.
Your taxes, those often have to be submitted as well. Those are the things that you should have, on deck, consistently developing those. That helps you with your planning, but it also gives you access to these grants when they do become available. So I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to be ready. And that means oftentimes taking that time, working with professionals to get your financials in order and your statements ready to go so that you have these opportunities.
Yeah,
Right.
Don't wait till you see the opportunity. Get it all ready now so that when that opportunity pops up, you're ready to go.
Absolutely.
Right. So I'm going to do one more question from the group, and then we'll try to bring this all together. There's a lot of great questions in here, and some of them, directly to each of you. And so I just want to make everyone is that we will take all your questions and we'll get answers from everybody on the panel, and we'll post it on our website, because some are very specific to what Portia does or what Chanel does, etc. So Chanel, for this final question from the audience, this individual is wondering how you work with the business owner to find the right amount of capital at the right time. How do you make the decision about the loan amount, and is it ever different from what the owner requests?
Sometimes it is different. This is such an excellent question. So first, we need to see the financial statements for the business, or the financial projections, if there's not a history of revenue in the business yet. Based on that, we'll be able to determine what the capacity is of the business owner to cover the debt payments. We're very flexible in terms of the term of the loan, the interest only period. We're really looking to get to yes. We'll also look at the household income to understand where is there extra capacity there in case the business doesn't perform as we hope, which is just a reality of business. I had a business once and my projections were not what we actually did. Let's be honest here, that happens. And so what's the capacity in case maybe the business is more seasonal than they thought, or there's probably 1,000 examples of things that can change that dynamic. And through that process, we want to find the monthly payment that's going to work, but also meet the needs, right? So where does that capital need to be invested? Is it equipment? Is it working capital? And oftentimes, because our team is, many of us are business owners or have been business owners, we can also rely and tap into our coaches and advisors with specific industry experience. We're able to help the entrepreneur focus and prioritize. or to be creative in how we might deploy a certain amount at one point and then have a goal to come back in 6 months or a year for a follow-on loan. We can also collaborate with other lenders if they're looking for more or need more than we're able to offer in that specific moment. So yes, all of those factors contribute to the final loan amount that would be approved. Each case is taken and looked at in depth to find what works. And through that process, we're able to get and make an offer to a business owner that we feel really confident about. And almost all of the time, the business owner either understands the change of loan amount or we're able to find and partner with other lenders to make sure that it all comes together to fit. And then we continue the relationship over time so that if there is any challenges with repayment or a dynamic in the business that was unexpected, we're able to adjust as needed so that the business owner can ultimately be successful. And you can't achieve that by, like after the approval, just hanging up the phone and then never talking again. So that we really see this as a relationship that develops over time.
Right, the relationship is very important. So as we wrap up this morning, I want to give you each the chance to look into the future and discuss how diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives will help impact the small business landscape. So Kim, as you look forward to the next decade, what do Detroit and Michigan need to do to be more competitive and provide a better launching pad for small business?
Yeah, I think as I've kind of been saying throughout, is our normal institutions or economic development institutions really starting to focus on some of the smaller businesses to help them grow, I think will be really important. I do think we have a culture of kind of focusing, as I mentioned before, on the bigger sized businesses and how, so what products financial products can we start supporting to make sure that those micro businesses are starting, but then they're growing and then they're getting to become the bigger business at some point. I also would love to see in government that we are putting the people that we're talking about serving in positions of power in government, in leadership, and in economic development as well. And so seeing women, seeing people of color in those positions to help keep moving that forward. And I think, with procurement, government continuing to play a role of understanding and really looking at the policies that we have in place and looking at their impact. And are they better serving certain types of businesses? And if they are, how can we make sure that our procurement policies are serving our all different sizes of businesses and our small businesses too? So that's how I'd love to see government play a role in the future.
Thank you. Portia, what are your thoughts about what steps the business community can take to close the equity gap in our region?
So I think one of the things that the business community is going to have to recognize is that there is a certain amount of barrier mitigation that they're going to have to do in order to see small businesses, women-owned businesses be successful. We've spoken about it a little bit this morning already, but I think, it is naive of us to believe that a small business can launch if we're not also promoting things like paid family leave and other things that businesses and people who own those small businesses need to actually be successful, to know that they can retain employees who don't have to quit because they've had a child and that person either has to come back to work immediately and or they will have to quit otherwise. So I think all of us are going to have to really be honest with ourselves. If we truly want a diverse and equitable workforce and we want small businesses to flourish, we're going to have to look at some of the challenges that are presented to those who are launching small businesses and really work to, encourage the legislature, the states, the government in general to really look at some of those things that we can do to be supportive so that they can be successful. Again, I speak from a place where I don't always recognize the fact that, as my internet went down, I was able to switch to another laptop and sort of make things happen. That is not the case for a lot of small businesses, right? They're not able to just go to another device. They don't have an IT person on staff, or as Kim does in her home, they can help her out really quickly. I don't know that he knows he's the IT person, but he is. But really, those are the things that people need to take into consideration when you're trying to build a fair and equitable workforce and these small businesses, creating a successful pathway for them, is that we have to look at some of the other barriers that exist and have existed primarily for women and for people of color, and really work towards mitigating those barriers. And I think that's one of the areas where a nonprofit like Focus Hope can be most helpful. We try to talk about Head Start and early Head Start and child care for the children of people who are in our workforce program, but do we also have it for a small business entrepreneur who's starting out? What are we doing around transportation? And I know the chamber has talked about this ad nauseum, but until we start talking again about transportation and getting people to be able to go from their home to wherever they want to create that small business and not having it always be reliant upon having an automobile, we're going to have some mitigating factors that prevent people from being successful in small businesses. So I think our role in particular at Focus Hope is to really look at those barriers and really to encourage government and other places to really think about that as they say they want a diverse and equitable workforce and small business creation.
Great, thank you, Portia. So
Thank you.
Chanel, bring it home now. How can the Detroit region build a small business community that is more representative of the diversity in our community?
Yeah, I love this question because it really puts the onus on the ecosystem, if you will. The business owners are out there. They are, whether formally or informally, making it happen every day. We all know about the Detroit hustle, the grit that we have. People have been doing this forever. And so it's the job of organizations like mine and other business support organizations and lenders to figure out where are we creating unnecessary barriers and gaps. And I think one way we can do that is by first looking at the staff of our organizations, frankly. Do they represent the community? You know, if we want to serve Black, Indigenous, people of color owned businesses, then we need to have cultural competency. We need to value the things that the community values. We need to understand the characteristics of entrepreneurship through the same lens that the community does. And we can't do that if we're not, you know, like if we don't understand the culture and understand entrepreneurship as the community does. So first, I think we need to invest in the future leadership of our sector in Detroit. We also need to continue to evaluate access to capital and access to resources. More of it needs to be accessible at the right level, more like less barriers, more access, and then also the support that goes along with that capital. We have to invest in humans, again, kind of relating to my first point, in humans to support the entrepreneurs. Doing a program where 15 people are working with one coach or one staff member works sometimes, but not all the time, especially as businesses mature. They need one-to-one support. They need to be able to call someone that they view as a thought partner, a trusted advisor for advice on what their next step should be, or maybe support navigating a challenge that they might have. And so making that investment into the organizations that serve entrepreneurs is one mechanism, but not ignoring, you know, how much of those resources go directly to the business owners. We have to make sure that, you know, that this is getting to the business owners, whether it's in the form of access to capital or the support that they need, but it's them that should really be held up as the gauge of our success. So we have so much work to still do. I certainly, invite entrepreneurs to reach out to me and our organization as they are seeking resources.
Thank you, Chanel. You know, I say this often, but in this presentation especially, I mean, I wish we could keep going. You ladies are so good. There's a comment, one of the questions in the question box, one of the attendees said, love this presentation, which I agree completely. You ladies are spectacular, and you're such great resources and great leaders in our community. So I really do want to thank you very much, Kim, Portia, Chanel, for such a great conversation today, and really bringing greater awareness around the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion for small businesses. I also have to give one more shout out to our friends at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan for sponsoring not only today's event, but our entire Black and Diverse Owned Business Series. We're going to continue to be doing these programs over the next few months, so please, watch our website for more information as those programs come along. Coming up, we're going to be spending a lot more time on procurement, talking about with companies who have a goal around diversity spend, how many dollars, what percentage of their revenue do they want to spend with diverse companies, and how companies in our city and our region can access that pool of procurement dollars, what they need to know to apply to make their way and navigate through those individual organizations in order to be successful. So based on that, I think we're done. I'm maybe 1 minute over. Thank you for putting up with me losing my power for internet connection issues, but we still made it through with a fantastic program. So ladies, thank you so much. And to all of our participants, I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.